Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to have this opportunity. I know Pete's excited to share with you guys. So I just wanted to kick us off with a few housekeeping items. Like Pete said, I'm on his team. So I'm here to just make sure things run smoothly. But like he said, everybody on this call is an expert. So we want you guys to feel at home and learn a lot today, as Pete has things to learn from you too. So we're going to start with everybody on mute. That's just to cut down on background noise, but please feel free at any point if you need to unmute and ask a question. You're more than welcome to interrupt Pete. You can also drop a question in the chat. We'll keep our eye on that. Or you can wait until the end. We'll have an open Q&A where you can ask all your questions. We really encourage you to stay on as long as you can. A lot of times the Q&A sessions are some of the most informative times. People have a lot of questions that maybe you also have. So feel free to save those questions and ask them when you need to. Again, thanks for being here. It is my pleasure to introduce Pete Canalicchio. He's an award-winning author, a TEDx speaker, the founder and managing partner of Brand Alive, and we're very excited to be able to hear from him today.
Thank you, Ella, and thanks everyone. Really excited to talk about this subject, which is near and dear to my heart, which is personal branding, and hopefully it is for you as well. So let's dive in, and we'll go from here. I phrase this as personal branding, and we're all brands, but I give this a little bit of a twist today in the sense that it's for entrepreneurs, and you might not be technically an entrepreneur, but I believe you're an entrepreneur in spirit. And if you work for a large corporation, you probably are an intrapreneur, because usually those of us who are thinking about our branding realize that we are in ourselves more than just the entity that we work for, even if it's our own entity. So let's jump in and have a great conversation about what it means to have a personal brand. And I like to start out with the point that everything communicates. And if you think about that, both our verbal and our nonverbal actions are communicating something. And so let's give a couple of examples of different images that I believe have a powerful sense of communication. The first one here this is called a color guard. And I love this because it is really a powerful image that you can see in front of you. And this is an image of men in uniform from all the different United States services wearing their uniform and carrying flags. The United States flag is there, and there's probably flags from every military service in the United States. And you can see an esprit de corps here. You can see a sense of pride here. You can see a sense of uniformity. There's a lot that's being communicated in this picture. And it's just a great representation of what I mean by the term everything communicates. Not one of those people is saying anything, but they're saying so much through their nonverbal communication. Now, let's take a look at this picture. What's going on with this gentleman today? He's not having a good day. And we don't know why. I don't think he's got something in his eye, because it seems like his fingers are on his forehead. But probably he's dealing with an issue, and he's communicating a lot to us. And we might be empathetic. We might be like, whoa, I'm not going to get near this guy when he's like that. He's usually not good to talk to. It really doesn't matter how we respond. The important thing is for him to know how he is looking and what he's communicating by his actions. Now, let's take another example. How about this lady? She's communicating a lot of positivity, right? She's got a bright smile. She appears to be very warm and inviting. She seems very cool and composed. And again, just representations of the fact that even without verbal communication, we communicate a lot of things. Look at her desktop. I mean, it is neat enough to say she's got her act together, and just cluttered enough to say that she actually has a purposeful life and a purposeful probably job that she does. All right, with that in mind, let's move forward. And what I like to do at this point is say, look, let's talk about what is a brand. We used to think about brands as only being those elements that are associated with consumer products, goods companies. But that is really dated back probably to the 20th century. Today, brands have much, much more of a broad spectrum. And so individuals are brands. For those of you who don't know, this is Patrick Mahomes. He is the quarterback of the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And he is very, very much a brand. What he says on the field, what he says off the field gets listened to by millions of people. And he's a leader on the field, and he has a voice off the field. How about this brand? This is a brand that I know and love. This is a brand that I've been associated with for much of my life. I was brought to Atlanta because of the Coca-Cola company. I was hired by Coca-Cola out of business school, and I've been connected with Coca-Cola in many ways. It's a brand that I really enjoy, both the consumption of the beverage or many of the products that Coca-Cola has that are not beverages. So pin sets and apparel and shoe wear. This brand has such a powerful connection with me. One of the reasons is because it helps promote happiness. How about this? This is absolutely a brand. It started out as a movie back in, I want to say 1976 or 77, but then it's become a whole series of movies, and it's on the internet, and there's games, and it just keeps growing and growing as a brand. There's sub-brands underneath the Star Wars brand. It was sold by Lucasfilms to the Disney company about, I want to say about 10 years ago, and they are doing amazing things with this brand. How about Under Armour? It is a brand that's a little bit tarnished in the last probably decade. It's kind of a fighter brand. It came out back in the late 20th century to compete with Nike and Adidas, or Adidas as you pronounce it. And then, really had some tremendous technology, and then got to the point where they were maybe spreading themselves too thin. And so they're struggling to get back to who they are as an identity. How about this gentleman? One of our favorite characters of all time. Mickey Mouse came out in the 1920s and has been with us ever since, and continues to bring joy to people young and old. How about Gucci? Gucci is a phenomenal brand. Many people aspire to own this brand. Those that do own the brand typically find that they love it, and it really connects with them in a very personal way. How about this person? Beyonce Knowles, of course, a mega brand, right? A global brand. One of probably the most global personalities that we know of today. She is a presence. She is a force. She communicates through her music, but in many other ways as well. NFL is a big sports brand in the United States. It probably is the leading sports brand in the United States. Of course, Patrick Mahomes is a player within the NFL. And then finally, this is Jeremy Lin. Jeremy played for the Toronto Raptors. This is a NBA team based in Canada, but part of the National Basketball Association. So you can see that brands today have a broad spectrum, and they are representative of all different kinds of elements, whether they're corporate brands, whether they are feature films, whether they're characters, and especially as individuals. All right, so now that we've kind of given an idea of what a brand is, let's talk more about a definition of a brand. This is not a formal definition that you would get out of a brand textbook or a marketing textbook, but kind of a more of a understandable, relatable definition that I like to share. So when I think about a brand, I think about what it does for us and how we connect with it. And so in this case, the first thing is there's a relationship that we have with the brand. A brand, many of us have a personal relationship with our vehicles. Many of us name our vehicles. You don't have to raise your hand, but rhetorically, if you have ever named a vehicle, I would say, raise your hand maybe, internally. But I would guess that more than one of us has done that. And so for me, I've had a relationship with my vehicle for a number of years. It's completely reliable. I enjoy getting in it every day. The ride is great. It gets me where I want to go. It has plenty of room so I can carry myself or a lot of things. And I know that it never lets me down. So in like relationships, personal relationships where we get to know somebody for a very long time, if they act a certain way and we're used to that, then everything's great, right? But what if they don't? What if they act in a different way? Well, we usually will give them a pass and we'll say, hey, is everything going okay for you? And usually it isn't. And so we're all back to normal very quickly. Well, that's the same way we have with brands in our lives. And in the case of this, of a vehicle like mine, which is an Acura MDX, it is like that because it has been completely reliable to me. Now, how about another aspect of a brand? Brands can be they build trust with us, so they can instill a sense of protection, because when we engage with them, they give us what we expect each and every time. So here's a great example of that. This is a Starbucks brand. It may not be your favorite brand of drink, predominantly coffee, but there's plenty of teas and other drinks that they serve, both hot and cold. But what you know about Starbucks is you get exactly the same thing every time, whether you're in a Starbucks in Shanghai, in Rio de Janeiro, in Switzerland, or in the United States, or in Indonesia. That's the amazing thing about brands. There's that sense of who they are and what they are, and the fact that we can trust them to deliver on an experience. And as you think about all of these things I'm sharing, think about yourself, about the way that you relate to others, the way that you build trust with others. And now, how about this one? The idea that brands remove risk, or another way of saying that is brands add certainty to our lives. So in the case of this brand, which is the Tylenol brand, I like to give this scenario where maybe you're taking care of a young child, or you're the parent of a young child, and she has a fever, and you ask your spouse to go to the store, to the drugstore, and pick up Tylenol because you want to reduce her fever and make her more comfortable. Now, let's say he gets to the store and he's looking on the shelf, and he doesn't see any Tylenol, which is an acetaminophen, but he sees a generic version of it. Are you going to be happy with him if he brings that back? I know if it were me, I wouldn't be, because I won't trust my child to something other than a brand that I know that I can rely on to deliver what it promises. And so in this case, with the Tylenol brand, which is owned by Johnson & Johnson, they're all about giving what they promise, and therefore there's risk removed and there's certainty provided because of this brand. Now, when we look at all those things, and there's other elements as well, but these are kind of the big ones, what does that mean? Well, it means that we're willing to pay a premium for the brand. And think about it, right? If you have a generic version and you have a branded version, the branded version almost every time is going to cost more money. But the reason it costs more is because it's delivering on all these things. And for that, we're quite happy to pay a premium, because we believe the value that we're getting is going up. So again, I would ask you to think about yourself. How do you build your relationships? How do you build trust? How do you remove risk? How do you add certainty? And are you worth a premium because of the relationship, because of the way that you build friendships, or the way that you connect with others? And if we look at the Apple brand and we say, okay, no pun intended here, but apples to apples, if you compare Apple's products, whether it is a computer, whether it's a mobile device, whether it is a platform for music, any of these things, the Apple brand is able and quite willing to charge more, and we quite willingly pay for more. And what I can tell you is it's working. And we so love this brand that it reached a market value of over $2 trillion just recently. $1 trillion a few years ago was unheard of. Now Apple has reached $2 trillion. So I would say that they are consistently delivering on their brand, and we're quite happy to pay that premium for the brand. Okay, now we've kind of given an idea of everything that communicates and the idea of what brands are and how brands interact with us. Let's look at brand hierarchy, which is really important to do if you're going to think about yourself as a brand. Now, the first thing we have to realize is if no one knows us, then really this brand only lives within us. So we have to build awareness. And I like to use this symbol, which many of you may recognize, but some of you may not. This symbol was very, very hot a few years ago. It is the Bitcoin symbol. It was very hot because people were getting into digital currencies, and they were speculating on these digital currencies. And some of them made a lot of money on that speculation, and others lost a lot of money. And so the brand was very, very, kind of at the forefront of people's lives about, 2016, 2017. But now is lost that kind of reverence and is now diminishing in its awareness. So to build that awareness, we typically introduce trial. And here's an example of some coupons, whether they're physical coupons or digital coupons. That's a way to get somebody to try your brand. If you think about yourself, you may meet a bunch of people in a social setting, whether it's like this case in a digital social setting or in a physical social setting. You may bump into somebody and be willing to put yourself out there and have them try you out. Well, in the case of physical brands like these on this coupon, you can see they're enticing somebody through a free sample. But how about in what is my favorite retail environment, which is Costco? They love to do sampling, right? And I love to show up at Costco right before lunch when I'm a little bit hungry, because I know I'm going to get the chance to sample probably 10 or 15 different kinds of foods or other things like drinks, smoothies, and usually they're very, very good. Now, does the brand expect that you'll buy right away? No, but they want you to try them out so that you will start to build a preference for them. And so when we think about the next level, awareness, then trial, then preference, the idea of preference is you've tested this brand and you start to like the brand. That doesn't mean that you have anything more than that, but it's okay. You're developing this relationship. Now, when I think about chocolate chip cookies, my favorites are homemade, right? Which I almost never get. But the next level down is slice and bake. And so that might be Nestle or Hershey's slice and bake chocolate chip cookies. And when they're not available, then, Chips Ahoy or Famous Amos will do. And that's okay. I have a preference for them, but I'm certainly at this stage, I'm not loyal to them. So loyalty is the next level. And if we think about loyalty and we look at this young lady who's pushing a stroller around, this is a Naprika stroller. She's very happy. She knows that her baby is safe, her baby is comfortable, her baby is secure. And because of that, she can be all those things also. And she has a place to put all of her things. And therefore, she is in a good state of mind and she can have a really happy experience. So she's gone from awareness to trial to preference to saying, look, you know what? I'm going to buy this and now I'm loyal to this brand. Now, what does that mean? Well, when you're loyal, that means you're going to choose that brand when it's available, but you're going to go for another brand when it isn't. Well, when you get to the next level, which is insistence, then there is only one brand for you. And I love using the Coca-Cola example because I am brand insistent when it comes to Coca-Cola. If I'm going to a restaurant and I order a Coke and they say, I'm sorry, Coke's not available, is Pepsi okay? My answer is no, because I'm brand insistent on Coke. And if they can't give me a Coke, then I don't want any kind of cola. And so I'm going to probably choose water or lemonade or something else, but I am not going to choose the competitor. So I am brand insistent and quite proudly showing that love for the brand. So think again about yourself as you come down this hierarchy from awareness to trial to preference to loyalty to brand insistence. And now the last one is advocacy. Here's an example of a Tesla. I got to ride in a Tesla recently. A friend of mine bought one, and it was exhilarating. For some of you, you might know my former career. Before I went to business school, I was a Navy pilot, and I had the chance to fly a lot of jet aircraft and felt the G's of a jet. And I can promise you, that is an exhilarating experience. Well, this Tesla was the closest thing to being in a jet aircraft that I felt in probably 20 years. I mean, it goes from zero to fast in like no time. But more than that, I mean, just the level of the ride, the way that it was driving. In fact, at one point, we were on the highway going about 90 miles an hour. And my friend said, look, you know what? If I just push this button here, this car will drive itself. And he did. And I got to tell you, I was nervous about it. And I was like, please put your hands back on the wheel, which he didn't. And I could see all these cars in and around me visually. And then on this computer screen, I could see them also. And then he put his turn signal on. And the car moved over into the next lane all by itself, positioned itself properly to do that. Now, I don't even drive this car and I'm advocating for it, but he absolutely was advocating. And one thing I wanted you to remember when we talk about advocacy is we typically advocate for somebody or something because not of the fact that it's going to do something good for you, but because it's going to reflect better on us. I'm going to be advocating on your behalf if you're a good friend of mine, because I know you're going to engage whomever I advocate you to in a way that's going to reflect positively on me. And believe me, that if you advocate for a brand and it lets you down, you're probably never going to advocate for that brand again. So that's the hierarchy that I like to talk about, and that's the hierarchy that we should be thinking about when we think about ourselves as a personal brand. Okay, now that we've kind of covered the bases, let's look back, let's get to a higher level, and let's think more strategically about ourselves as a brand. And so I like to reflect on the fact that why is more important than what, and why is also more important than how. So we think about why we do, what we do, and then how we do it. So when we look at these two individuals, Oprah Winfrey and Elon Musk, they have really been clear on how they've defined their why they do what they do. And in the words of Oprah Winfrey, the founder of the OWN network, she says she has a passion to bring happiness and a sense of fulfillment into every home through television and to make the world a better place through philanthropy. And if you know her as a brand, you know that she lives this why each and every day. She is about making the world a better place. She's about bringing happiness to people. And so she is a perfect example of understanding who she is, what she's about, and delivering on her brand promise. How about Elon Musk? He's the founder of Tesla. We just talked about Tesla, the vehicle. And he says that he has passion for more clean and sustainable sources of energy for a better and more sustainable world. And in fact, many of you also probably know that Elon Musk founded the company SpaceX, and that is all about sustainability also. So he's living his brand through all the different companies that he is creating, trying to create this new, more cleanable and sustainable sources. So Tesla's run on electricity, and so we're trying to figure out a way for us to move from non-renewable resources of energy to renewable resources, and he's leading the charge. And up until he showed up, we had some examples of electric cars, but I got to tell you, they were pretty boring and pretty, let's say, generic. And he's just infused so much energy and excitement. And I'm still reveling in my experience in the Tesla, which I wasn't even driving, because of what he's brought to this equation, which is so beyond what we thought of an electric car before. But it's much more than that. And so I would say Elon Musk is living his why absolutely as well. Okay, let's pause for a second and think about what matters the most. So as we think about our why, it's important to take one more step back and think about these questions. And I would challenge each of us to answer these questions, because when we ask them of ourselves and then we answer them of ourselves, we're in a very good position then to start to establish things like, what is our brand positioning? What is our brand promise? What is our brand hierarchy? But we can't get to those questions until we understand why we exist. And so I like to think about this. For me, faith is very important. And so I like to think about, what is my relationship in this world? Why did God create me? And what is his purpose for me? So that helps me kind of orientate my whole life. And then I think about things like why I do what I do. In this case, this is Steve Jobs, and what he said was, I want to remove the barrier of having to learn. Now, that's a powerful why, right? And I love the example, and I've seen this many times where I've been with friends who own an iPhone or an iPad, and their young child has come in out of left field, swooped in, grabbed the iPhone or the iPad out of the hand of their mom or dad and start to play with it. Now, do you think that Steve Jobs has fulfilled his why? Do you think he's removed the barrier of having to learn when a child of maybe 4 or 5 years old has no qualms about using a technical device that has more sophistication than was used to get the U.S. space community, NASA, and their aircraft and their spacecraft from the United States to the moon and back. I mean, think about it. How powerful of a why he has, and how much he's delivered on it. And he's been sadly gone for a number of years, but the brand still lives this why. Now, why someone should work with you? This is another next step, right? Because when we think about ourselves as a personal brand, and work can be used in a loose term or a very narrow term, but the idea is that we want people to be willing to engage with us and do it for a purpose. So in the case of Truett Cathy, he said his why for why people should want to work with him is he was about honoring God and helping people. And I don't know if you've ever experienced a Chick-fil-A. I know, unfortunately, it's not outside the United States, but maybe you've had the chance to visit it. This is a quick service restaurant, or a quote unquote fast food restaurant, but it feels much, much more like relaxed dining. Now, we haven't had the chance to do the relaxed dining for a number of months because of the pandemic, but they're still living the brand in many ways, and especially in the way that you engage with them as you go through the drive-through. The idea is that, yes, they make this amazing sandwich that tastes delicious in a variety of forms, and it's a chicken sandwich, but it's more of the way that the brand engages with you, from the individuals, how they engage with you. And if anyone's ever gone there, you know, when you've said thank you to them for giving you their food or delivering their service, their response is my pleasure. And that is something that is very unique to the Chick-fil-A brand, and it's part of who they are and what they live for. And so I would say that Truett Cathy has done a really good job of understanding why someone should work with him. Now, the last thing I like to think about is, why should they care about you? And this is kind of a strange thing. You're thinking, okay, I'm a personal brand. Maybe you own a business, or maybe you have a service that you provide to your fellow employees or to clients. But it's usually, why should I care about them? But I'm saying to you, why should they care about you? And the idea here is, if you deliver on your promise and you're consistent with your brand engagement, in the sense that you fulfill everything that you say you're going to fulfill the way you want to fulfill it, then those people will know you're authentic, they'll know you're genuine, and they will care about you. And in this case, here's an example of, this is Navy SEALs. I'm former Navy, so I have a huge affinity for the Navy SEALs, which are this special forces group. And their why is to conduct military actions that are beyond the capability of conventional military forces. There was an example of a young woman who was captured in Somalia a number of years back, and she thought she was never going to get released from these folks that trapped her and kept her and tried to ransom her. And ultimately, one night in the middle of the night, she felt somebody touch her on the back and said, "We got you, you're safe." And in a span of about 10 minutes, she was out of there on a helicopter back to home. And you think, okay, those people, those Navy SEALs did not know her, but it didn't matter. She was an American, and they were there to support her and protect her and rescue her because of that. So why should someone care about you? All right, now that we've kind of covered I'd say the most strategic parts of it, let's go down a little bit and start to think about some things that are a little bit more tactical. And what I recommend here is, as you think and answer those questions, you'll start to want to build your own brand hierarchy, and you'll want to communicate your expertise and experience in terms that others can understand. And so here's two examples, but I like to say that brands are universes. We have a universe that we create. And so you as an individual, me as an individual, my universe entails everything that I do when I connect with people, both in a personal setting and a professional setting. Here on this webinar, you're engaging with me as a brand, and others will engage with you. So here's two examples of how you can engage with others that will help connect with them and communicate who you are. And the first one is a professional LinkedIn profile. Now, since I've had this profile up in my example in this presentation, I learned that while I thought this was very good, this really is not as good as I thought it should be. There's an expert on this webinar, a gentleman named James Moffat, who is a phenomenal expert as it comes to a lot of things, but specifically LinkedIn is one of his expertise. And he has a coaching class that he offers on how to enhance your LinkedIn profile to maximize it. And my guess is that he would not score this young lady well, although I think she does a pretty good job. And maybe compared to your own profile, you're thinking, not too shabby. You know, she's got a banner behind her. She's got a nice picture of herself. Her name and her title are up there, very easy to understand, the company she works for, where she went to school, and a little bit about herself. So she's on the right direction, right? She's probably done more than most. Now, the next thing you can think about as you promote yourself and communicate who you are to others is creating a personal website. Now, for me, that is something that I knew that was important to my business and who I am as a brand strategist. So I created a site for myself about 4 years ago. And today I like to say that I live what I talk about. And so I'm trying to communicate things like my essence and my ethos and why I do what I do and how I can help you. And so here is a woman named Janet Mock. She has a very simple, but I would say elegant website. And here you can quickly understand what she stands for, get some metrics on what she's done and how she engages with others, and then learn about her books and how the press can engage with her and where you can connect with her if you want her to speak. So I think she's done a really good job of using a personal website to communicate her brand message. All right, now that we've heard all this, one thing I want to leave you with is this idea that we have to be ruthlessly consistent in our communication. That doesn't mean we get to do it 90% of the time. We have to strive to do it 100% of the time. And if we do everything really well 98% of the time, but we do something really bad 2% of the time, we're going to confuse our message and we're going to confuse our audience about who we are, because this 2% over here is going to stand out and it's going to convey a different message than what we're trying to convey in this 98%. And so people are going to go, is he more like this or more like this? And maybe if he's more like that, then maybe he's not who I thought he was, and therefore maybe we shouldn't be connected in the level of connectivity that we have. So here's an example of someone that I don't know personally, but I think about him and say, this guy does it better than most, if not better than anyone else out there. My favorite athlete and absolutely my favorite tennis athlete, this is Roger Federer, who lives his brand each and every day. I like to say that on the court, he is elegant and endearing in the way that he wins and the way he loses. He is graceful in his winning. He's graceful in his losing. He always praises his competitor. He always talks about their level of excellence on the court, and he is genuine about it. So that's how he is on the court. How about when he's off the court? I mean, this guy is polished. He's cool, calm, and collected. And I got to believe that he would be the same guy that you would, if you never knew who he was, he would treat you the same as if you knew who he was and what he's accomplished, right? Winning more major, tennis events than any other tennis player, male tennis player, that is. So here he is promoting the Rolex brand. Rolex is a major supporter of tennis globally. And so they've chosen him and he's chosen them. And I can promise you, at least from my understanding of Roger Federer, the brand, he would never diminish his own personal brand for money or for prestige. He's connected to the Rolex brand because the Rolex brand fits with who he is. And so they're adding value to each other in this relationship. Now, here he is with a brand of champagne. And even when he's a little out of control, he's still in control. You can tell he's a fun guy, but he's always composed. He's always within his brand limits. Here's an identification of his logo, RF, and that translates into this logo, which is the idea of perfect, or he strives for perfection. And perfection is way beyond the way he plays tennis. And so if we look at his website, here he is hugging, looks like a ball girl. He's got a smile on his face. She has a smile on her face. And there's a lot of genuine connection, emotional connection there. And that is the guy that he is. And ultimately, he also promotes a foundation, which is about giving back. So if you look at Roger Federer, the brand, is he ruthlessly consistent in the way he expresses his brand? I would say he does it better than probably 99.9% of those out there. So great example of what I mean by ruthless consistency. That doesn't mean you wear exactly the same thing everywhere you go. It doesn't mean you say exactly the same thing, but you know what your brand promises. You know why you do what you do before you know what you do and how you do it, and you live that every day. All right, so we're almost at the very end, and I like to finish with the idea that attitude is everything. So if we think about attitude, it really makes a difference in the way we choose to live. And if we connect with a positive attitude, then all of a sudden, everything about our day orientates itself in a more connected way. And I'll another plug for Ted Larkins, who's on this call today, or this webinar today, who wrote the book Get To. This guy lives a positive attitude better than anyone I know. And the whole idea of Get To is we don't have to do things, we get to do them. And even if they're things that we don't perceive as mostly positive things, we change the mindset from a have to a get to. And that is all about this positivity, positive mind, positive vibes, positive life. And when we have that positivity, then we evoke a smile. We are warm and engaging. If you go back to the very first thing I said about everything communicates, we saw the color guard, we saw the gentleman who was looking like he was having a stressful day, and then we saw the young lady who was evoking so much positivity, right? And so that positivity means, typically that we want to help, they're willing to help, we're willing to give our best efforts. And most of the time, people who see that are going to want to work with us. And so when we achieve that, we've kind of achieved this level of nirvana or excellence, and that makes us as much who we are and what we want to accomplish. So we're kind of at the point now where we've finished the formal presentation, and I'd love for you, if you want, to join our newsletter by texting my name to that phone number. We're about to come out with a newsletter later this week for the last quarter, and I'm excited to share with you what's been going on that hopefully will add value to your lives. And then I'll just share one more thing. In my book, Expand, Grow, Thrive, I talk a lot about the principles of a brand. I talk about the model called LASSO that I created. And when we think about that LASSO model, which stands for lateral, addictive, storied, scalable, and ownable, you can apply those principles to yourself as a brand. And I would encourage you to consider buying the book and looking at and reading those with that mindset. All right, so let's pause for now, and I'll come off of the share and stop sharing. And I'd love to answer any questions that you have about what I've talked about. And let's see if we can have a good conversation about what it means to have a personal brand. All right, I'll throw out a question. Does everything I've shared today, does it make sense to you? Is there anything in there that you might have had a little bit of a difficulty with? Or is there something that maybe I missed that you would say, that's great, Pete, you added all those things, but what about this over here? That would have been important for me to hear about. All right, who's going to get started? All right, Johan, thank you for volunteering. I know the first question is always the hardest one to ask.
Someone's going to have to go first. So thank you as always. This is always so happy.
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know whether others are as well.
So can you get better now?
No.
Yeah, that's a bad sound.
Is it too much? Or?
It sounds really garbled.
Real staticky.
Okay.
Better.
Don't move.
It's not perfect,
okay.
but we can understand you.
Very strange. Okay, I'm sorry for that. So again, as always, thank you, Pete. This is excellent. Very, very highly appreciated. So being an entrepreneur and looking at your ladder from awareness and up to advocacy and so on there. What do you think is the toughest part on that journey for being an entrepreneur, a small brand? I mean, you were looking at Coca-Cola and Tesla and so on, and as an entrepreneur, you're not really up in that stratosphere, of course. But what do you think is the biggest challenge for a starting entrepreneur or somebody who's come a little bit on the road, but yeah, still have some way to go?
Yeah, no, great question, and 100% agree. I use examples like Coca-Cola and Tesla because we all know them. But even if I think about the Apple brand, right? You know, and Steve Jobs, 40 years ago, no one knew Apple. I mean, it was literally built out of a garage with him and Steve Wozniak. So what I would say is the most difficult part is around awareness. But I would tell you, do not start building your awareness until you've gotten those other things figured out. Because if you start to build your awareness, you know, there's a saying in marketing that good marketing will kill a bad product faster than anything. And so if you're going to build your awareness about who you are, you better have your ducks in a row. So it almost might be a blessing to you as an entrepreneur, as an individual who has his or her own brand, to have not built your awareness high at this stage yet, because you might be like, oh man, I haven't thought about why I do what I do, or what I do, or how I've done it the way that was served up today. I haven't really given any context or framed out those things that were shared, or, you know, even thought about what a brand positioning is. And maybe for many of you, that term is foreign, and I totally appreciate it. It might be, but it's something that brands have to do. So I would say absolutely awareness is the most important part. I'm still building my awareness, but I'm grateful that I've done the thinking. So when people engage with me, they should hopefully see a high level of understanding of who I am as a brand, that I'm interested in helping brands come alive in the hearts of those that experience them for my clients. That's what I live for. I'm about encouragement, and that's what I'm trying to do on this call and whenever you engage with me. And so those things I've thought about, and now awareness is important, but it might actually be a blessing not to have a lot of awareness if you haven't done that yet. But great question.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Always helpful, Pete. Thanks.
My pleasure. Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, is it me?
Yes, you, buddy.
Oh,
Hey, so I'm a student here.
Oh,
in
sorry,
Georgia.
Fendi. Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm really sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm a student here at Georgia, and so where do you start with all this? You know, like, if you want a personal brand, where do you start? Like, how do you compete with the companies that are already there? And like, do you use like blue ocean strategy, or, you know what I mean? Like, or do you go into like a industry where everyone's doing already there, and then it's just like doing the same thing essentially?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Fendi, and I'll share two things. One of which is I offer a coaching class, which is kind of like if the next level, if you're interested in kind of defining each of these things, that's something I can do with you and be happy to. There is actually a substantial discount for students because I'm a huge advocate of education. I've had the opportunity to be an instructor pilot when I was in the Navy, and I've actually been a part-time instructor at Georgia State and Mercer University. So keep that in mind. But what I also say is if that isn't something you choose to do, I would really challenge you to answer those questions, those ones that I talked about. And this is recorded, so I can share this with you so you'll have it. But really, it's important to understand why you do what you do. Because if we're going to figure out where we should go, we need to understand what motivates us. And if we understand what motivates us, it really doesn't matter where we go, as long as the motivation can be fulfilled. So if you're thinking, okay, I don't know where what my why is, then you might be lured into something because of the glamour of the company. Like, let's just say Google offered you a job. That might be really cool, and you might want to go do that. And then you find out it's actually not what you really wanted to do. Or it might be that this company over here has got a huge signing bonus, and that might lure you in. But if you really know why you do what you do, then you're going to go after something that's going to allow you to do that and allow you to be the personal brand within the company brand's framework. And then you're going to be very happy about where you are and where you're going. You're going to be authentic and you're going to be genuine and you're going to thrive in that environment. And that's really the best place for all of us.
Right. All right. Thank you, Pete.
My pleasure. Buddy, you had a question?
Yeah, Pete. Anything unique in building brands when it comes to a nonprofit? I run a nonprofit, which is basically me. But are there any gotchas or special things you need to focus on if you're coming in out from that sector?
Yeah, great question. And James, I see your hand, so I'll call on you next. I think for nonprofits, authenticity is really important no matter who we are, whether we're working for a for-profit brand or a nonprofit brand, or whether we're talking about ourselves as a brand. But I would say in the world of nonprofit, there is probably less tolerance for inauthentic or inauthenticity or lack of genuineness, right? Because you're saying you're doing something and you're willing to forego profit, you're willing to serve the community, whatever community that is, because you believe in it that much. So I would say the tolerance level for being unauthentic is really low when you talk about a nonprofit organization. But still, those other principles apply. But I would say if you're going to waver with a nonprofit, you've got to live that authenticity each and every day.
Thank you.
Absolutely. James, please.
Hi, Pete. So I love it. I love what you do. It's fantastic. And thanks for the plug as well on what I do. So excuse me, I'm not on video because I'm in the car at the moment and I've got a car full of noisy kids. But just come back to kind of the power of kind of your personal brand in the way that, I mean, particularly for business owners. As a business owner myself, a solopreneur, I have my own kind of logos and my own kind of branding with the name of the company, Visibility Impact. But who is behind that? People want to know who's behind the company. So you kind of need to brand yourself. So people will then see me as, you're the Visibility Impact guy, aren't you? But how do I bring that out? So as you mentioned before, you need that consistency as well. If someone sees me on one social media, they need to see me consistently on another. If I choose to use multiple, that it's the same type of message and not something completely different. So I love what you say, and I know that you cover this in programs, but even myself, I mean, I am still struggling. I think there's a question also about we don't have the budget or the deep pockets like we have with Apple and people like that, but you can still create your own personal brand, as in something that's special and unique about you. We're all unique. There's only one of us. So how do you bring that out in whatever you say and do? So it could be a style. It could be the way that you dress. It could be a mannerism. It could be many, many different things. But it has to be something that's kind of original, and then bringing that out as well. I mean, I've seen other people do it. I met a guy that wore a tie. It was always a fish tie. And I asked him, why are you always wearing that tie? It's always a fish. And he said, it's actually a goldfish. And he said, because he always quotes Einstein, he said, you can take a fish out of water and ask it to climb a tree, but it can't climb a tree because it's not made to climb a tree. And because he quotes that all the time, and it's part of kind of a program that he does, that he's become kind of, oh, you're that fish guy. So people know him just by the tie he wears. But that is something that he's created for himself. So I do love what you say, but also for me, I need to find kind of that, what is it that makes me stand out from the others doing maybe the same type of business?
Yeah, great comments, James. I 100% agree with you, and I've had the pleasure of working with you. We really got into it when you were helping me with my own LinkedIn profile, which and I'll tell this to everyone, when he first said, I'll review your LinkedIn profile, I got, Pete can be defensive, and those who know me well know that, this nice, likable guy, when he feels threatened, he gets very defensive. And I was like, okay, James, let's see what you got. And he was like, okay, here, and I'd give you a 40. And I was like, what, a 40 out of 100? He goes, yeah. He goes, you should feel good about it though, because most people get a 22. So, so there was a little bit there, and you did a wonderful job of helping me elevate that. But you're right, we have to And whether it's the fish, the tie with the the fish on it, or whatever it is, it's got to be authentic to who we are. And so this is not easy stuff. You have to think hard. You have to spend a lot of time thinking about who you are, why you do what you do, and be authentic about that. Ted Larkins, who I think had to drop off, was on here earlier. He's the gentleman who wrote the book Get To. And he had a T-shirt on, and he was like, "Oh, I should be wearing a necktie. You got your jacket on today, Pete." And I said, "No, Ted, you're living your brand. That's who you are as a brand. You're being authentic about yourself. This is who I am when I'm giving a webinar. So, that's me as a brand." So I would say, do the homework, be thoughtful about the questions that I'm pondering or posing to you, ponder over them, and really get to the sense of who it is and what it is. And then what you can do, once you have all this defined, like when you define your brand positioning and your promise and your architecture, then you hand it over to a phenomenal designer, right? People who understand how to create visual identity systems, not logos, but visual identity systems. And they will take all of that and they'll create your visual identity. And they'll show you, okay, here's how you create a banner that goes on LinkedIn or on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever social media. Here's how it should look on your website. If you have a physical product, here's what it should look like. Maybe, there's other ways that the brand will be represented. And that helps you to connect in a way that's genuine to who you are. And then you have to think, okay, what does that look like for me individually in and day out in a professional setting, in a personal setting, so that I can live my brand and feel like I'm being authentic to everyone who engages with me, regardless of where we're at and what I'm doing. So that's what I would share with you. And of course, I look forward to continuing the conversations as we move forward, James. Hopefully that helped. Ernesto, you had a question, please.
Hi, Pete. Just a comment. I really like what you just shared. And as you're talking about individuals as brands, it really came to mind the concept of legacy. Like you as a brand can live longer than after you're alive. And somebody once said that very few people know their great grandparents or know much about them. And I think we now live in a digital age where we can create that legacy about who we are, and we're going to have records of that. And part of what you were talking about, like the consistency within our professional life and also outside of our professional life, that's something that really resonated with me in kind of like this whole concept of creating a legacy, your brand is a legacy that can live farther out than you will.
I love that comment, Ernesto, and you're 100% right. I mean, and one of the things that I was sharing with my wife this morning is, as she thinks about her kind of like where she's going with her own life, is what she gets to do next. And I said, for me, I didn't choose it, but in 2009, I got laid off from the Newell Rubbermaid Company after I had just been given this Best Contributor Award and been promoted. And all of a sudden I was without a job. There was a major recession going on at that time. And it actually has been a huge blessing because it's allowed me to do things that I would have never done had that not happened. And it allowed me to really dig deep and say, okay, who I am, who am I, why do I exist, what do I want to do with myself, what is my purpose? And from that came Expand, Grow, Thrive, which is the name of the book. For those, there was someone who asked me that. But I wrote that book over 4 years while I was creating my company. And then from that, I also wrote a number of other guidebooks to help people expand their brands and then use licensing to do that. So one of the things, just to comment on your point or build on your point, Ernesto, is those will be in existence long after I'm gone, and they will serve as a legacy for me to others. And I take pride in that because my goal in that was to share my knowledge to help others by doing that. And of course, we have a lot of other ways we can do it, but as a professional, that is one of the neatest ways of doing that. And so I'm grateful that I had the chance through this, what seemed like a really bummer of a situation for me, because I was really loving what I was doing, but it happened. And so I said, okay, what can I do now that this situation is my current reality? All right. I know there was some, let me just go through the chat box and see if I missed anything. And if in the meantime, anyone else has a question or comment, we'll try to answer it. We have about 4 minutes before we're done. Okay. Great to see everyone on the call today. I really have enjoyed this.
Hey, Pete, I've been on, but I haven't been able to see you. But I was on a bus running around town. So this is Bill Higgins.
Okay, Bill, welcome. Do you have a question or comment?
Comment is just converting what I've been doing on a personal level here in the state and as a doing business as to a nationwide nonprofit. Have several people from our class have signed up to be board members as well. So guys like JD and Dave Marquet. I'm ready to rock.
Oh, very good. Well, I know that you've been thinking a lot about your own brand, your company's brand, why you do what you do. I know that you're about helping the homeless, which is a phenomenal thing that you do, Bill. So I commend you for that, and I'm glad you were able to grab some of our classmates to help you on that trip.
Yeah, basically it's fixing the broken system to help the people that are homeless. Since, I lived through it myself. Yep. Personal experience.
Excellent.
So, I'll let you go.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Bill. All right. Any last comments? Oh, yeah, please. Go ahead, Paul.
How are you?
Well, doing well, thank you.
Good. I did a program some time back. Two things I want to say. The one is we were doing the why of a new company. We were developing this new company. We were going through the why, and it was an insurance company, so we were saying, we want to protect you, and we want to do this, we want to do that. And the owner of the company at one stage put his hand up and he said, just by the way, he says, we are here to make money. And, it was kind of like wow, okay, yeah, that's good. And I said to him, listen, we can't go out to our customers and say, the reason we exist is to make money. So you have to have something that you can say to your customers, but at the same time, there's a balance in business. From my side, is we're here to make money. That's kind of the why as well, if that makes any sense. And the second thing, if you want to comment on that, but the second thing is this program that I was on some time back. There was a vision. They had this vision. And they said, every meeting, every possibility, every time you get together, the first thing you do is, as the leader of the group, you share the vision. And I think, part of this whole personal brand as we small entrepreneurs, we need to share our vision, share our why over and over again, even if it's just a one-on-one. We need to be sharing our vision so that the brand awareness it grows over time. So it started with one person and then it grows to the next person, but you're always sharing the vision. But is there a time? Because I see a lot of consultants and they're always saying, I wish you the very best, or I'm the most prolific producer of such and such. Is there a point at which that becomes too much and people kind of stop believing in it?
Paul, great comments all the way around. I do believe that we have to reaffirm what our vision is, especially if there's more than one of us in an organization. Leaders, my definition of a leader is by de facto, somebody wants to follow you. If nobody wants to follow you, you're not a leader. I don't care what your title is, in an organization. A leader is somebody that others want to follow. So if you're a leader of your organization, then you should be sharing your vision and making sure that everyone know. And I would say as a leader, and I learned this when I went to the Naval Academy, but it's not only in a public setting, but it's also in a private setting. It's getting one-on-one on the individuals in your organization and showing them that you care, and then conveying to them your vision and getting them to adopt that vision. And if you're a good leader, they will adopt it. So that's the first thing. But the second part I would get to is the idea of, again, and this is a theme today, but it's around the idea of authenticity. if we're being authentic about who we are, people will accept us for who we are. And we don't need to be accepted by everyone. We just really want to be accepted by what I would call, in marketing terms, our target audience, right? Who are we trying to connect with? In my case, I say I'm about helping overcomers. Overcomers are the entrepreneur who wants to, compete with the big guys. It is the small brand who wants to become a big brand and wants to understand what the principles for doing that are. And somebody within an organization who's just joined a department and doesn't know what she needs to know in order to understand how to be successful in that organization. She's an overcomer. And students, I believe, by just the definition of what they're doing are overcomers. So for me, I've gotten clarity on who my target is. It's more of a psychographic target than a demographic target. But for me, that's who it is. And so for me, my goal is to convey the knowledge I have about brand strategy, brand expansion, brand licensing, and to encourage. And so that's what I try to do. And I try to be authentic about it in each and every conversation, whether I'm talking to a group like I am on this webinar, or whether you and I are having a one-on-one conversation.
So there's never a time when it gets too much?
Well, I think, so back to the point about authenticity, I think it's too much when you're no longer being authentic. I mean, and I had this conversation with my wife yesterday about the idea of humility, right? There was this point about somebody being confident, but because of that, they couldn't be humble. And I said, no, I believe humility and confidence can live in the same world. You can be very confident and be humble about what you do because you know where your talents come from. So I think there can be absolutely too much. And usually people who suffer from confidence tend to be the ones that give too much. And you kind of want to just say, look, just be comfortable with who you are and where you're at. And when you are comfortable, you probably will, lower, the volume a bit. And I also I espouse, and I hate all this jargon, but I'm very much of the mindset of less is more. And when you live that kind of lifestyle, then you know that you say one thing and leave it, and that's enough for people. If you keep repeating it, usually they get tone deaf to it, and you've lost all of your influence ability.
Yeah. I just wanted to say I loved your input on the why. Oh, that's great, and I'm going to put some effort into it.
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it. I see a couple more messages. I know we're a little bit over, so I just want to be thoughtful about that. Really, there was just kind of some general personal comments. So I just want to say thank you today for investing in this time to be on this talk. I've loved every minute of it. Hopefully you've got something out of it. As I mentioned, I do offer kind of like a next step for those of you who want to go beyond just hearing about it and actually start to build your own brand, your own brand and build your own profile. So for those who do, I'll be sharing a little bit about the coaching class that I'm going to be doing. And if we get to work on that together, I look forward to that. And for those who haven't, who don't, I totally appreciate where you're at. This is recorded, and I'll be happy to share it. If you want it, just let me know. All right. Thank you so much for your time today. And I just wish you, the very best in your pursuits. And don't forget, you are a brand. It's time to start acting like one. Thank you.
So I ask you, what can you do today to make your brand come alive in the hearts of those who experience it?